Hey boys and girls, Bald now back with you, and on this video I will be talking about Season 9 Episode 2 of Dexter. So it is of course the comeback season, if you like, sort of a soft reboot, and this episode is called Storm of Fuck. So full spoilers from the start of this review as always, and the plot of this episode is quite simple really. Harrison is of course back in Dexter's life. Dexter has some explaining to do. Harrison wants answers about the past, about why Dexter abandoned him, about why Dexter has been living under a new identity, and things get further complicated as the search for Matt is going on, and it's happening coincidentally in the woods near where Dexter lives, and this means that Dexter sort of goes into panic mode and obviously wants to try and cover his tracks, and because of that he agrees to help him, and Harrison help with the search party. And this is, of course, a way for Dexter to try and cover his tracks. So we get a familiar style plot, the sort of plot which they did to death really in the old show. And there's further drama because, of course, his girlfriend Angela is there and leading the whole investigation. She obviously finds out about Harrison and has some questions of her own later, because she questions, well, why have you never told me about your son? Why is he suddenly in town, etc, etc. There's also a bit of interest, certainly on Harrison's part, it appears, with her daughter, Audrey, or actually stepdaughter, if you like, because it's revealed later Angela isn't Audrey's birth mother, so that's sort of a reveal in a scene with her and Dexter. But anyway, there's appears to be interest from Harrison towards Audrey, and they sort of start hanging out and form up a little bit of a bond. Audrey has like a jerky boyfriend, and they're sort of in a group at one point anyway, like just hanging out. But that's the plot, and I think I sort of summed it up quite nicely there, where I said a familiar Dexter style plot. And really in this episode very little of note happens. There's one or two little bits. You've got like a subplot with this girl who gets kidnapped, who I think is the new girl in town from last week. I'm assuming maybe that's who she is, but it's obviously like the wider plot of these girls that are going missing. We see her. It sort of cuts back and forth between her throughout the episode, where she's in like a hotel room or like her room, and it's revealed at one point that she's being watched on CCTV by someone, and then she wakes up later and her phone has gone, and she's like been locked in her room, and she sort of finds out really that she's been kidnapped basically. So there's that stuff going on the side. Now, the episode is very sort of slow moving at times, and it is a slower pace than the old Dexter show, which I don't mind too much as long as it pays off and that in the end. But I guess the thing about the whole Dexter, originally the show, as bad as it got in later seasons, you at least had that pulpy sort of feel, and you sort of had moments of humour. I think the later seasons obviously suffered from becoming too soapy and convoluted, and there's definitely a feel to that in this episode. I think this episode definitely feels quite soapy, but my point about the pacing is then if it's just going to do the familiar Dexter sort of beats, and there's not really going to be that much new or that much that changes things, then I don't know, I kind of maybe just want the pulpy comedic Dexter stuff, because at least there's times where that can be quite entertaining. But this was definitely a step down on episode 1. Episode 1 I was mixed on, but I thought it was at least solid, and I definitely was. This one dragged a lot more than episode 1. First of all, I'll just say again, the Deb bits, Deb as the Dark Messenger or Dark Passenger really annoyed me once again. It was once again OTT, and I think what they're going for with Deborah is, I think they're playing up the whole fact of her as like the Dark Messenger. It's just her being Deb, but just turned up to 11 sort of thing. So she's obviously being very antagonistic and criticising Dexter for like welcoming Harrison into his home and saying you'll fuck him up. And again, we get the whole familiar beat of Dexter like wrestling with his demons and in denial, almost determined that no, I can be a good father, which again, there was similar plots to that in the original show. But once again, Deborah as the Dark Passenger was quite annoying in this episode. It was sort of too in your face, but that's what they were going for. Then it was like the Dark Passenger version of Deb, but again, it added nothing and sort of took me out of the scenes. The other thing to sort of talk about Harrison a bit is, because obviously we see more of him in this episode, then I don't think the actor's the best. I think he's a little bit one note, a little bit bland. There's not a lot of personality with him, and I think they're just sort of going for, he is similar to Dexter. He's very awkward and withdrawn. But I think it's difficult to judge on this episode, because I think for a lot of the episode he's being quite mopey and he's like being quite critical of his father and sort of poking holes and just challenging him. And maybe as we move on they might open his character up a bit more, but I didn't think much to the character or the actor in this episode. I did think he was kind of boring, and I think there's just this danger that they're just going to do the predictable stuff, the predictable father and son stuff with him and Dexter. There's some tidbits in there. I mean, they explain that Hannah has now died, so she's no longer around. Apparently she died of cancer, according to Harrison. And then that's a familiar way to make sure that there's no question of Hannah being involved at some point. And I sort of suspected that because I figured they wouldn't be able to get the Von Schorhosky involved. I guess because she's like contracted on The Handmaid's Tale, and probably be quite hard to get her back. So, you know, whatever, it's a convenient excuse, but I guess I can't really fault them too much for that. But yeah, a lot of the stuff with Harrison and Dexter I wasn't really into. Again, some of the forced drama with Dexter and with Angela was a bit predictable, and then you've got the sort of teen stuff with obviously Harrison hanging out with Audrey and her friends being kind of jerky to him, making fun of him because he's quite awkward and shy supposedly. And obviously at one point he sort of brings up the obviously the death of his mother and now his stepmom died. And obviously like Audrey's meant to be like likable, so she's like defending him and telling them to leave him alone. And I quite like Audrey, actually. I thought she was a solid character. I think she had a bit of like an energy to her. She was quite sort of feisty, and I thought the actress was quite solid. I'm just not really into the storyline at the moment. If they're gonna do a thing with her and Harrison, and it's just to do this with this whole thing of it just creates more drama for Dexter because he's dating her, her mother basically. I'll just say her mother because she raised her. So yeah, there's a lot of predictable soapy type stuff going on in this episode. A lot of familiar stuff that, to be honest, got really tedious in the old show. So I'm not really looking forward to the prospects of them repeating it in this season. Now, the way it ends is then it appears as if Dexter is off the hook with the whole Matt thing, because he's been able to cover his tracks and convince them that Matt fled town. So he's not actually dead. He fled town because when he killed the deer, he feared that he would be like arrested or like just charged with like the crime. So he actually left town. But then his father, played by Clancy Brown, pops up at the end, and he's kind of being like pushing the issue and saying no, my son's still out there. There's no way he would like leave town just because of that, and he's really aggressive, but he's also appealing to like the search party and the fact that, hey, we're a community and I've done this for you, please help me with find my son, he's still out there and he could die if he's left alone. And he actually talks them into it, and he talks Angela into it, like staying on and searching the night. So obviously what that means is that Dexter isn't out of the woods yet, that the pressure is still on him. So that's kind of how the episode ended. So yeah, not a great episode really. I think it was a step down on last week's really, and it didn't really do much for me, but obviously it's episode 2, so I'm going to stick with it, see how things develop. I think there's obviously an appetite for it as far as maybe viewers are concerned. So that's my thoughts on episode 2 of the new Dexter anyway. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How are things developing? How do you like the new characters? And what do you think of Harrison so far? What do you think about the whole dynamic with him and Dexter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please share me out on social media. You can also ding the bell on YouTube to get notifications, and look out for more new TV reviews. I have a bunch of new shows that I'll be reviewing this week. The pilot, so Wheel of Time is one, for example. Also the new live action version of Cowboy Bebop from Netflix, that's coming up. And also look out for my reviews of the Chucky TV show. So plenty of TV reviews currently going on the channel. But that's it for me for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.